It's that time again. The annual conference of the American Society of Ag Consultants, otherwise known as ASAC, is going to be held in Fort Myers, Florida, this November 4th and 5th. Kurt Covington is one of 9 professionals who will address the conference. The other speakers who will cover a wide range of topics represent Florida Farm Bureau, Florida Citrus Commission, University of Tennessee Institute of Agriculture, National Ag Law Center, Risk Mitigators and Advisors, Tyler Associates, as well as the lead economist for dairy at CoBank, and myself, Chrissy Wozniak from North American Ag. The day and a half of presentations will be followed by ag tours on Tuesday afternoon at Echo Farms, one of my favorite places here in Fort Myers. Attendees will experience farming at its most creative, with unique demonstrations, plants, and techniques being used to help farmers and urban gardeners in developing countries. A second tour at Echo will showcase simple technologies that can improve food, water, and shelter for millions of people. A third tour of a hydroponic grower is also being planned. For more information and to register, visit www.agconsultants.org. That's www.agconsultants.org. See you there. Today, we're joined by a remarkable individual with a rich background deeply rooted in farming, law enforcement, and community service. Her journey reflects a deep connection to agriculture as a fifth-generation farmer. Alongside her husband, she actively operates her farm in Norte County, California. Beyond the farm, her career has been equally as impactful, with roles ranging from a district attorney investigator to a seasoned agriculture bookkeeper. She's also held significant leadership positions, including serving as the 25th state president of California Women for Agriculture, and she is now serving as president of American Agri-Women. Today, we're going to discuss plans for American Agri-Women for her presidential term, some of the exciting things that are planned for this year through AAW, and we'll touch on some of the main issues that we're facing in 2024 as an industry. From Paradise, California, I would like to welcome Rose Tryon. Welcome, Rose, and thank you so much for being here. I really look forward to the conversation, and I should have also mentioned that you're also a good friend of mine.
Well, thank you, Chrissy. I hope I can live up to that introduction. That was pretty special, and thank you. And it's an absolute pleasure to be on your podcast. You have done such an incredible job with this, and thank you for all the work you have done, sharing agriculture with so many people online.
Thank you. Well, let's start it with your background. So how did you get to where you are today? Tell me how you grew up in the industry, and then your very diverse background.
It is pretty diverse. So I was born and raised on a 560-acre beef dairy and potato ranch in northwestern California, in Del Norte County, California. My mom's family were Portuguese immigrants. My grandfather immigrated from Portugal, and so my grandfather on my maternal side, he was a dairyman in Del Norte County, and probably one of the first non-native born dairymen, people to own land, actually, in Del Norte County. And my father's family settled in Del Norte County years ago. Actually, the piece of property that I currently farm on has been in my family's name since 1883, which is quite a legacy. And so I grew up on the farm. My dad and I have farmed together for years. And I think how I got involved in California Women for Agriculture is sort of this interesting story. So throughout my life, I watched my father farm and the farmers around it. And it's amazing. I could probably name off 5 dairymen in the area that I grew up in. And those dairymen with my father formed one of the first milk processors processing facilities in Delaware County. It was called Parkside Dairy. And it's amazing to me now, none of those farmers are in business anymore.
Wow.
It's like all those dairies have been sold. And so it was always frustrating to me that an industry that is really, in a lot of ways, agriculture is a service industry because we're feeding other people. And, how a profession so honorable could be so difficult for the people who are in it. And um, as I went through later in life, I got to know the women from California Women for Agriculture. And all of a sudden, I realized that I had this group of women who were very much like-minded. They wanted to preserve agriculture. They wanted to make sure that their farms and ranches would be left for their children. And so it was like just I had found my people. And so I started becoming more involved in California Women for Agriculture. Initially in my chapter level, and then at the state level, I eventually became the state president of California Women for Agriculture. And then I also started meeting people from all over the country with American Agri-Women. And I started with American Agri-Women. I started coming to the meetings. I learned more about agriculture. And it was really American Agri-Women that taught me the importance of agricultural policy and how much policy really affects farmers. And so I just found this other group of women, and now I have these women all over the country who are like my people. They're part of my herd, they're part of my tribe. And so that's kind of my growth there as far as American Agri-Women goes. As far as the other part of my life, I really had a passion for helping people. And so I was working for the Department of Social Services at one point, and I'd see these children come in, and they uh, just came from really tough circumstances. And so I wanted to do something to help children. And so I ended up becoming a probation officer. And honestly, I could probably talk for several hours just on this part of my life.
That
So my first job in law enforcement was a juvenile probation officer. And I realized at that point, a lot of these children were already in really tough shape. And so it just became this drive for me to do something to help. And so I ended up putting myself through the police academy, and I eventually became a district attorney investigator where I specialized in sexual assault and child abuse investigations, and did a lot of advanced training in forensic interviewing. So I was the one who created a safe space for children who are victim of crimes to be able to tell their story. So yeah, that was my background there.
yeah, that has got to be a absolutely heart-wrenching career. I don't know, do you build skills inside of you to be able to deal with it? How do you hear those stories and not want to go and hurt somebody?
um, so I think I really focused on it being my job to get the truth out, whatever that was,
Mhm.
and providing a safe space for that child to tell their story. And of course, they were taped interviews. And I'm very happy to say that not one of those children had to take the stand once the tape was
That's good.
played. Um, you know, it was most of them led to pleas. In a lot of cases, in sexual assault cases, it is, everyone goes, oh, plea agreements are horrible. Or sometimes they're not, because you don't have to have the victim go up and take the stand and have to relive everything. So you do learn to departmentalize things. And I think during that time of my life, I was living on the ranch. And so it didn't really matter sometimes how horrible your day was, that once I hit that gravel road and I could see, the baby calves bouncing around in the field, and then the evenings my dad and I would feed hay together, and sometimes I just lay on top of a bale of hay going out to the field and just look up at the stars, and you sort of had this sense of that everything will be all right in the world again. And then it's back up the next day to to do it all over. But I think having the farm, having the ranch, having this, growing up in this sense of a natural grounding, growing up with an understanding that there's more to the world. I think when you grow up in agriculture, you have this connection to the ground, the connection to the land, connection to your animals, and you really grow up with this sort of this automatic sense of purpose, because you're the one that has to get up and take care of your animals. You're the one that takes care of your land. And you grow up with this sense of purpose, and you grow up with this sense of just sort of this natural grounding, I think. At least that's the way it was for me. And I think that helped me a lot dealing with that type of an environment.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people can resonate with that message too, for sure. I know for myself, I need to be outside just to get all of that
Yeah.
mess out, or whatever that does, that healing from just being outside, right? Whether it's on
Yes.
the farm or on the water or, in a forest for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Take
you're
off
so
your
right.
shoes and walk through some fresh green grass, or
Yeah.
take a deep breath of fresh air. And yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have had some adversity that has really turned you into a very resilient woman. And you survived the Paradise, California fire a few years back, and that was actually when I officially met you. We had been going around. I think it was at Flyin, and we were talking, sharing stories. Each of us were sharing stories, and you shared that story, and it was very touching. What I came away with was one of the greatest lessons that I always think about. And I don't even know if you remember saying it, but you said, if you're ever in an emergency, don't take the clothes out of your closet, take your laundry hamper, because you don't you don't wear the other clothes. And I thought that's a really good point, because I'd probably just, you know, clear out my closet and put that all in the car. But you're right, the stuff in the laundry hamper is the stuff you really wear. So I took that as advice for sure. But
That's
tell us
awesome.
about that experience.
Um, so I think everybody kind of knows about in November of 2018, there was a forest fire, wildfire that was started. Um, they determined that it started by PG&E, Pacific Gas and Electric. There was an old connector holding a piece of wire. It sparked. It caught the grass on fire, and within probably 24 hours, the entire town of Paradise was gone. That day, I think the fire started like 7 o'clock or something, or 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the morning. And the town of Paradise was pretty much gone by noon. And I was home that day. Luckily, our animals were here, so I was home. And well, I mean, it's probably a whole nother story. I could go on for that for a while, but so I was able to evacuate. I um, was able to grab the dogs, and yes, unfortunately, I went to my closet and just sort of swiped all of the what was left in the closet, and so yeah, I really should have grabbed the hamper on the way out the door, because that was the clothes that fit us. So yeah, I mean, the entire town, we lost, our population was decimated like within, you know 24 hours. um we've done a lot to rebuild. My husband and I decided, we made the decision to rebuild in place. There was a part of me that really thought about going back to the ranch at that point, but we decided to rebuild and to be part of the rebuild in Paradise. So right now, Paradise has, we've rebuilt over 2,000 homes so far.
Wow.
And if you consider that, we couldn't even get on our properties until it was almost a month, I think, before we could actually get back to our properties, or pretty close to that. And, then we had COVID hit, and it took almost a year just to get the properties cleaned up. And then, rebuilding. Fortunately, the way we were sequenced is we were pretty much rebuilt by the time COVID had hit. Um, but I think the town of Paradise has been amazing. I think we've done a lot of work. The community has really pulled together, and it's really quite the story of resiliency is what has happened here in Paradise. And unfortunately, we lost 86 people in that fire,
Mhm.
and you know those families will probably never really recover, um,
Mhm.
just from the loss of a loved one. Um, but I think the rest of the town, a lot of people have chosen to stay. A lot have chosen to rebuild. Some have chosen to move on and to live someplace else. But it's a pretty amazing community, and I'm really proud of the community and proud of our staff that we have at the town of Paradise, who have just done a lot. Everyone just cares. They're all in it together. Everybody wants the town to prosper and come back. So
Yeah, that's amazing. And I know from my experience with Hurricane Ian, two year and a half ago, the joy that comes from people banding together in a catastrophe, just strangers coming together, and that love is just. I almost wish everyone had to experience that. As horrible as that sounds, I think we're lucky to be able to do that. I just remember going to church after, and they opened the church and everybody went and sang, and it felt like the end of The Grinch Who Stole Christmas.
yeah,
And, they're just singing around the empty Christmas tree. And that's what we were doing. Like, people's houses were destroyed, things were taken. It was awful. We didn't know how it was going to heal. But everybody came together and, made a food pantry. And, it was just incredible, that really raw humanity that you feel when you're in that kind of a situation. Um, and I feel better for it. I feel like a better human being for have having been able to see that, even though it was horrible to go through. And I sense that's kind of how you feel too. That just seeing that other side is probably monumental.
yeah. I mean, the way that much of this community has pulled together has been really pretty remarkable, and
Mhm.
just the compassion that people have felt for each other. And there's like in neighborhoods, I've overused the word random, but the way the fire hit, and like my neighbor across the street, thank goodness for them, their house survived, but everybody else in this neighborhood, the house was gone. And so they were basically neighborhood watch why everybody else was coming back and we were trying to rebuild. And so you find pockets of that where people um, are trying to help each other, and you know and come together. We have a lot of our churches, a lot of our churches made it, which is pretty
Wow.
amazing.
Yeah.
And so, they put together food pantries and donations of clothes, and, just the outpouring from, especially in the aftermath of the fire, for people trying to help and support those of us that were here. So it does restore your faith in humanity. And it's interesting now. I for the first time, um, I actually talked about the fire in public. I was doing a, I was asked to come speak at the California Ag Commissioners Employees Association, and their theme was on resiliency, and I'm like, I talked to a friend of mine, and they're like, you should talk about the fire. And I'm like, no, I don't want to talk about the fire. So I did a presentation about resiliency and the rebuild and things like that, and how we got through it, and the skills and things that we needed and the relationships that we built. And so it was that was just, when was it, last month, I think I did that. So that was the first time I actually talked about it in public.
Wow.
And I didn't know how it was going to go, if I was going to end up losing it, because I actually shot video on the way out that day, when I
Wow.
evacuated. Because I'm not one, you know how I am about pictures. Um, I I'm not one to really shoot video or take pictures or anything like that, but I did actually shoot video that day. And so I was able to share like what it looks like being inside of a wildfire. So,
Oh, I
and
can
then,
imagine.
that's one of the things that American Agri Women and that I've been an advocate of for probably the last 12 years is responsible forest management. And
Hmm.
so, to
Yeah,
live through that devastation was, okay, this is why we do what we do. This is why we
right.
talk about it. So,
Yeah, excellent point. And yeah, let's switch gears to your term as American Agri Women president, which I'm so excited about. I know we've already started doing things, but tell me what are your plans and where are we going under your leadership?
yeah, so I think I have just a great team. I don't know if your audience knows it, but you serve as vice president of communications for American Agri Women, which I am so incredibly grateful for. You have been just one of the main pins for me, the main one of the main people that keeps it together. I had all these ideas about, sort of rebuilding our infrastructure and, updating like our membership and our communications platform. And I'm like, okay, how am I going to get this done? And what is this going to look like? And, I had all these ideas, and then all of a sudden you appear. And I'm like, oh my God, this woman has the exact skill set that I need. And the from the first day you and I met and we started talking about plans, it was just um it really just made my heart sing because there was just so much that you and I were on the same page with. So I think a lot of it, the focus is just, rebuilding our infrastructure, modernizing our communications platforms, making sure that we are communicating with members and that we're reaching out to members. Um, we really hit the ground running even prior to convention, but we officially started at convention in November. Um, we had really ambitious goals on rolls out and when we were going to be done and things like that. And I think, life happens. And so we haven't been
That's for
able to get
sure.
everything done as we wanted to. But I think that's one of the things I've always set this goal when I was in California Women for Agriculture, and even now is I try to leave it better than where I found it, and not that we were necessarily in a bad place, but you always try to leave things for the next person so that they can be set up. And so I think that's what we're going to be able to accomplish. Getting our infrastructure rebuilt, our communications redone, and then beyond that, I think that it's really important. One of the things that American Agri Women does well, and maybe it's really unique for us, is that we focus on policy. That's really has been just sort of the area that we have done our most work in. And so I think some of our best work. There are other women's organizations out there that focus on leadership, which is also important. They focus on, um, you know, getting contacts and building out your network. Those are also important. That also happens within American Agri Women. But I think one of the things that we have done well and that I'm refocusing on is just our work on policy. And I think, especially this last couple of years, it's really showing just how quickly bad policy can affect agriculture. And just the things that have taken place and the things that have happened and how difficult it has made things for farmers to continue to be profitable and to grow food for the world is just been astounding. And so I think it's perfect timing in a sense is for us to refocus on policy. Um, and if you want me to, I can tell you a little bit about how American Agri Women goes through that. If you want to go
Yes,
into
yes,
that
explain
direction.
that for sure. Yeah, and we can lead into our big news for this year, which is our fly-in, right? So
So
you
one of the other things that you and I had discussed, and we'll kind of get into this with our big news, is I really wanted to bring all women from all agricultural groups underneath the American Agri Women umbrella. Not in a sense that, we still want them to have their identity into their group and things like that. But we want to be that big tent for all women in agriculture and all agricultural groups to come together, especially when we want to work on policy. And so, how American Agri-Women is set up is we basically have 3 meetings a year. Our first meeting is in November, and that is our convention. And that's where every 2 years, well, depending on the cycle, we elect officers. You and I were both elected last November. We'll serve out 2 terms in our current positions. And then in like late March, early April, we have what's called our mid-year meeting. And our mid-year meeting is really our policy meeting. And that is where we all come together as a group and we discuss every policy that we have. And we go over every policy position that we have. And at the end of that weekend, we develop our new policies and we all vote on what those policies are.
And
And
this is what hooked me.
I
This
know
is what hooked me was this
it is
mid-year
amazing,
meeting.
I think, for a
Mhm.
group of women from all over the country, all different walks of lives, some farmers, some not farmers, some in agribusiness, some in banking, some that are just consumers that care about agriculture. And we go over line by line every one of our position statements, and we develop our position statements at that meeting. And then after that meeting, what we do is we look at our position statements. We take a look at what's going on in agriculture right now, like what policies are there. If there's a specific bill that's coming up that either we're in favor or against, we try to gear it more towards bills, but then we start to write white papers. And so we'll write a white paper. We have subject matter experts within our group. And then we also reach out to other groups to get their input also. And we start to develop our white papers. Most of the time, we like to develop them on a specific bill that's coming up, either a bill that we agree with or a bill that we disagree with. And then, or we'll do it on a topic, like we did one several years ago, 2 years ago, I guess, on ESG, which is way before it had really exploded. We've done white papers on Agenda 21, on trade, on crop protection, animal welfare. And so we developed these white papers, and then our next meeting is in Washington, D.C., and that is our fly-in. And during our fly-in, we have the first day that we're there, we do a debrief on all of our white papers that we have so that everybody has a full understanding of where we're going and what we're presenting for this cycle. We discuss each of the white papers. And then the next day on Monday, we have a symposium over a topic that's chosen by our past presidents. And then we meet with government and regulatory agencies. So a lot of times we'll meet with EPA, the Department of Agriculture, forestry, you name it. And then the last day that we're there, we meet with our local representatives. So our congressmen that represent our areas, our senators that represent our state. And we have folders that we put together, and we have all of our white papers in those folders. And we talk with them about either bills that we would like them to support or possibly oppose, and then our ideas from our white papers. And then that meeting, we usually also visit a embassy while we're there to learn more about trade and trade with other countries. And then we have a congressional reception. And during that reception, we present an award. It's for a legislator that has, really helped support agriculture. And each year we give that award out. And so, yeah. So now do you want to talk about our exciting news?
I sure do. So you
So this year, for the first time, they're kind of keeping with the theme that you and I had originally talked about, which we really want to bring all agricultural women's organization together with us, right? And we chose which was a great idea on your part. Our hashtag this year is hashtag Ag Women Unite. And so we have this RTI group, our Road to Influence leadership team. They come up with this brilliant idea is to, for the first time ever, to open up our fly-in to other women, other agricultural women's organizations to come join us and have their voices join ours to talk with our regulatory agencies and to talk with our legislators and people in Congress. And so we're super excited about that. This is the first time ever. It's going to be Washington, D.C., June 2nd through the 6th. And we would just really like to have all women of agriculture come join us.
Yeah, and what really excites me is that this is an election year, and no better time to get women in our industry excited and empowered for what we can do when we come together, right?
Yeah, and I think that's really important. I think women's voices are important in this area. Um, I think that all voices are important, not just women's. But you know, AAW was started by a group of women, and the purpose behind it was to be able to talk on behalf of agriculture. Um, and you know, that's what we've done. That is our foundation. That is our base. Is to have our voices be heard. And I think our founders early on were brilliant, and they realized that really the importance was affecting um, the regulations and the policies that are implemented. And that's kind of our drive.
Yeah, I love it. And so, as just mentioned, that with the election coming up, with all of these threats to our industry on the horizon right now, and a lot of us thinking about, okay, well, how can we make a difference? What should we do? What's our direction? Can you just share maybe a couple, your top 2 or 3 issues, whether it's property rights, water in California, which a lot about, Endangered
Ugh.
Species Act, just maybe pick a couple of those that are kind of near and dear to you, and outline what the problem is, and then steps we can take, that we should be taking to fight against these things.
Yeah, I was asked this question just yesterday. I did a presentation and they said, what are some of the issues for agriculture? I'm like, at this point, where do you start?
Yeah.
You know, you know, animal welfare versus animal rights. We have always taken care of our animals. There's no farmer out there that would knowingly harm an animal. But yet the animal rights activist groups have come in and really changed the narrative about what agriculture is about. Um, you know, the use of crop protection. It's all of a sudden that has been demonized when crop protection is what helps us in our yields and what produces more food, not less food, which is what produces healthier food, not unhealthier food. Those are all issues. Labor for agriculture is an issue also. And I know that there's just sort of this misconception that everybody who comes across the border this illegally is somehow going to work in agriculture. And it's just absolute nonsense. I don't know. There's this misperception that somehow agriculture is unskilled labor. Well, I can pretty much assure you that agriculture is really skilled labor. I don't know of any tree farmer who is going to just pick somebody off the street and have them prune their fruit trees. I mean, that's just simply not going to happen. There is no
I would
dairyman.
never even let my husband in my garden.
I might have to agree with that. I My husband has gotten much more interested in gardening and growing things than he ever has been. But yeah, there's been several discussions about the proper way to handle a tree. So it's the same way with dairy. I mean, it's just ridiculous to think that a dairyman's going to stop at Home Depot and pick up somebody to go milk his cows. I mean, it just simply doesn't happen. It's agriculture is skilled labor. And so, excuse me, Um, one of the biggest issues with getting labor in agriculture is just going through the verification processes. And so, we've spent a lot of time working on agriculture, like H2A program and things like that, to get qualified people here to work on farms and ranches. So that's always been an issue. Trade continues to be an issue for us. Making sure that there's equal trade with other countries, and that our farm products are able to be transported, and transportation is part of that trade. um, supply chains, we've seen so much lately on just our supply chains and the breakdown of supply chains. It's like if you're trying to ship produce to another country and it's sitting on the dock, um, that just doesn't work. We have perishable crops that need to be transported in a timely manner. The policies and regulations around that affects the timeliness of those deliveries. And then also trade coming in, is it fair? Do other countries get to flood our markets with, and I hate to say this, but sometimes inferior products? And that cuts into the livelihood of the American growers. So, here we have a lot of rules and regulations that we have to follow. If you're going to input food from another country, the very least you should be following the same rules and regulations that we have to follow here. So I think there's so much, there's so many things, and then also the farm bill. Do we have a farm bill? Are we going to have a farm bill? And just having that put on hold for so long is really creates a lot of uncertainty in agriculture. And now you have like this big push from the current administration of USDA that is wanting to tell farmers how to farm, what we should farm, type of crops we should farm, what type of production we should do. And now they're trying to even overreach anymore and connect those type of farming practices to markets. And so there's just so much going on that it's mind-boggling to me, and so many decisions that are being made that ultimately are really harmful. And I think one of the things that I talk about a lot is having a seat at the table, and agriculture really needs to have a seat at the table. And a lot of times we don't, you know, and or the problem is our seat at the table is on the serving platter, and we're the ones that are being carved up. If you look at just in California, we have this tremendously powerful water board who is able to say how much water is going to be released, who's going to get what water. For the first time ever, they denied historic water rights. And there's not a farmer on that board. Like, there is nobody from agriculture represented on that board. There's, I think, one person who has a family member somewhere in their tree that knows something about farming. And that's it. And to me, that is so ridiculous. It's like, how do these people continue to make policies around agriculture when they don't even have the input from the farmers who are growing the food? It's just amazing to me.
Yeah, that's for sure. Great points. And we could probably do 3 hours just on the issues, right? But
Yeah.
I do have one last question for you. Why do you serve the industry so passionately? Why do you give your time, your heart, your life? What are you most passionate about in all of it?
I think it started with just watching my father struggle to keep our family farming. And every day I am honored with the fact that I currently farm ground that I used to feed calves with my grandmother. And that's pretty remarkable. And every kid from a farm should be able to have that opportunity. And unfortunately, that opportunity is being taken away from many young girls and young boys that are out there that really want to continue in their family farms. And I guess that's why I'm passionate about it. It is so sad for me to see the kids that I grew up with on neighboring dairies, and the dairies don't even exist anymore.
Yeah. Wow.
And so that's why I do what I do.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Rose. I can't wait to see you in a few weeks at our mid-year meeting for a big hug.
I am looking forward to it. You're one of my bright spots.
And thanks to all who are watching or listening. If you want to learn more, all of the links are provided in the show notes. Don't forget to subscribe to North American Egg Spotlight on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Listen Notes, Rumble, Telegram channels, wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you like the episode, I would love it if you shared it. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone. And go to AmericanAgriWomen.org and come join us.
Yeah. Did you know that at NorthAmericanAg.com, we are committed to providing valuable resources for farms and agribusiness? Find your next podcast in the Best of Ag podcast library, delve into our on-demand webinar series, check out the latest in ag news, or treat yourself to a new hoodie or tee from our swag shop. Head over to our subscribe page to join our community and be the first to know about what's happening in the industry. North American Ag provides daily ag news and weekly podcasts covering ag tech, ag policy, new products, family, and faith. North American Ag gives farm families and ag professionals insight into what's happening in agriculture throughout North America. Ditch the mainstream media. Join North American Ag.